everyone, and welcome to the Sunday League podcast, brought to you as part of our UK NFL Fantasy Football Network. I'm Samit Paul, and as always, I'm joined by TSL's co-host and co-commish, Jack Cowling. Jack, wild week as the NFL burst into life with trades and signings on June the 1st. I'm sure you were loving it. How you keeping, bud?
Yeah, it was one of those where I was like, is it April? Is it April Fool's? When they started to come in, I was just like, I thought this was the quiet period and stuff. And yeah, crazy to have this much activity. You know, Roger Goodell and the NFL lot are loving it because it just keeps more eyes and interest in those guys. But yeah, really exciting and some real blockbusters that we'll obviously get to.
Definitely, we'll get stuck into those in more detail shortly. But we've got a packed episode this week. We'll start with our panic index as we pick out 10 players who are making fantasy owners sweat it out and give them anxiety ahead of the 2026 season. We'll run the rule over all the trades and waiver moves that have been made across our network of leagues. We'll look back at the blockbuster trade that saw Myles Garrett join the Los Angeles Rams. But first, Jack, let's start with our panic index and select 10 players who are potentially going to be the cause of some sleepless nights for fantasy managers in the coming weeks and months heading into the new season. Just a quick explainer, there's 4 tiers to this. We've got tier 4, which is for the more relaxed among us. That's no care in the world. For those who are a little bit concerned, we've got tier 3, which is occasional temple rubbing. Things start to get a little bit more serious in the second tier, which is nervously rocking in quiet moments. And then for those who are essentially just falling apart, we've got tier 1, panic attacks through the night. So think waking up in a cold sweat, nervously muttering your player's name. Those are the tiers. We'll get started with Malik Neighbours then, Jack. Now, whether it's my Giants bias or not, I'm still hopeful that this has been blown up into something way bigger than it is. John Harbaugh hasn't ruled out Neighbours from being available in week 1. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported that the Giants are still hopeful that he'll suit up for that Cowboys game. That said, I'm not completely deluded to think that this isn't starting to sound like a problem. The Giants signed 3 wide receivers on Monday: Braxton Berrios, Odell Beckham Jr., and Juju Smith-Schuster.
What a trio.
Exciting times, I'm sure, no doubt. We will talk about those in more detail later, but adding that much at wide receiver, albeit Berrios is more of a special teams as a returner, naturally that does make me nervous that the Giants are making moves to deal with any prolonged absence for Neighbours. So as well as my Giants fandom, the fact that I picked Neighbours with my first round pick means I've got a lot riding on it. I'm hoping this isn't a serious injury concern when we get to early September. What made matters worse was that I saw you put him on the trade block in your league, which absolutely rocked me and spiked my blood pressure. So I think he's got to be causing plenty of anxiety for his fantasy owners right now until we hear something concrete or we see him involved in training camp. I'm trying my best not to freak out. We're still at the start of June. So I would say there's some occasional temple rubbing at the minute, bordering on nervously rocking in quiet moments. Where are you on the panic index for Neighbours?
I just love the idea, yeah. As soon as you drafted him, it's sort of that sleepless night. Like, was that the right thing? I know I love my boy, but I've only seen him 1 year and stuff. So, no, it's difficult. Again, we're obviously talking at this from a dynasty perspective. I think if you are just in a redraft, I think you're staying pretty clear of him. You know, again, regardless of the talent, I do think that there's enough there to sort of, yeah, kind of get him right out of your immediate sort of wide receiver 1 targets, potentially even wide receiver 2 targets. But dynasty, obviously, different beast. We're looking at a longer pick, longer game and yeah, more years and such further down the line. So I think when somebody sent through that video of him playing, was it a softball charity match or softball tournament or whatever it was? And that was not running what he was doing. It was sort of somewhere between sort of a limp and a stumble. I don't know what it was. I think someone either said it or it was part of the tweet, was sort of like his knees like sauteed onions or something like that. And it was there. And obviously, we always knew at this time of the year he wasn't going to be fit. We weren't drafting him to be fit at this time of the year. He's still got a little bit of period before, obviously, sort of start the season and such. But I am, my panic is just born more from sort of similar comments that I made last week in terms of I can just see the sort of return date just being continually pushed back. And then the year's out, and then you start to wonder, well, that's 18 months, 24 months off the field and out, and longer term. I've just, again, sometimes, as I say, in your mind's eye, you sort of have this vision. And I think that's probably at the minute what is causing me to nervously rock in quiet moments. Because again, like you said, I've obviously put him up on the trade block and things. But again, it's not that I desperately want rid of him and such, but he is probably the biggest dilemma I have now in my fantasy, roster and such. And yeah, thinking about this as much as we do, he is probably the one that's causing me the most anxiety. So I think I'm a little bit more stressed than you. I know that you've got that your sort of Giants upside hat on, and I'm not a Giants fan, so I don't. I'm a little bit more like, I traded you with a lot of my capital. Do not do this to me, and such. But so I think I'm probably a little bit more. I'd say I'm one tier up, nervously rocking.
Malik, like Jack said, don't do this to us. Come back in training camp, please, and don't be out for too long. Who you got next for us, Jack?
So probably staying with the Giants. I thought Jackson Dart is one that's interesting, and obviously I think last week we sort of discussed the off-field stuff. That they're trying to push that as much as they can for you and such. And, I still think there's more noise than you want generally for there being a young player. I think it's always a little bit frustrating when they start to generate that noise early on in something that could be viewed as obviously negative and such. But I think the thing that probably because of that I hadn't thought about, but is, and a little bit more with the trades that have gone on, is the impact of no neighbours. And sort of, so for me, the concern, and again, probably with Jackson Dart, I am more sort of occasionally temple rubbing. I'm at that sort of level rather than sort of quite as nervous as I am with neighbours. But I think it just comes down to, if neighbours isn't on there, and it's going to be potentially the targets that he's got, could then lean to him taking more risks on his feet, which obviously, we've seen the sort of runner that he is, obviously increases the risk of injuries and potentially time off the field and things like that. And it probably, as I say, wasn't anything that I'd really considered until, all these sort of new signings started happening and sort of, we start to really consider what it might look like without neighbours next year. And I do think, again, the sort of room that he's got, I think sort of Slayton, Mooney, likely as a tight end, got the rookie Fields and a few other vets and stuff. It's not a room that's like absolute dirt like the Dolphins. It's not a completely talentless roster and such. But I just think actually the way he plays, and if people aren't getting open against decent defenses, which there are a lot of now across the league, could it actually have quite a big knock-on effect to Dart's career trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I've got no issue with the political views and values and that side of it all, each to their own. I think it was Connor Orr on Heed the Call who said it doesn't take a genius looking at Dart's background, where he grew up, the fact that his brother is called Diesel. It doesn't take a genius to figure out where he stood politically, so that's not the issue for me. Like you said, though, you touched on there, the problem I have with it is that he did it publicly and he's brought all this unwanted and unnecessary attention to both himself and the Giants. I think he looked quite nervous and sounded quite nervous in his press conference last week when he took questions from the media, and he was sort of batting off the questions saying, look, I've given my statement. That's all I've got to say right now. You could kind of hear in his voice that he's kind of shook up by the whole thing. So I'm not sure if he takes that forward with him, because I'm sure he's going to hear a lot more about it going forward and on the road in certain games and whatnot. So does that impact his sort of mental preparation for games? I don't know. But like I say, I think he's just created this distraction that the Giants didn't need. Harbaugh did his usual jovial sort of granddad personality thing and tried to brush it all off. And by the way, you can miss me with the Abdul Carter criticism as well for those that are criticising him. Like, he hasn't been sort of an exemplary professional since he joined the Giants, but you can't sort of, if you've not got an issue with Dart coming forward publicly like that, then you can't really have an issue with Carter speaking up and speaking his mind as well. So yeah, I think both of them should just keep it in-house, avoid the whole thing, sort it out between them. As far as your point on the wide receiver options and stuff goes, obviously the absence of Neighbours is a huge, huge blow for us, but I think they've done okay giving him the options that he's got to pose a sort of deep threat in certain situations, but also the short game until Neighbours comes back. So that doesn't worry me too much. I think we can handle it, but it comes back to that same question that you've just said, is how long is Neighbours going to be out for? So I'm going to go tier 3 again, occasional temple rubbing on Dart, but again, there's a Giants bias to this, I think, where I'm kind of looking on the brighter side rather than perhaps being realistic about it.
Yeah, no, I think that is probably the right area to be in. As I said, that's probably where I am, because as you sort of say, like, there are some weapons there. He is an improving player. This is a lot of sort of media noise because it's a quieter time of the year, and if this was happening, in peak season and things, I just don't think it gets the traction that obviously it does during this sort of period and things like that. But as I say, it's just that way he plays, and just envisioning what his game may look like, and the potential downside to that is maybe just giving me a little bit more stress than I maybe considered when Dart was potentially on the board for me and things like that, really. So I think we came in at the same place there.
Certainly going to need to see a more mature and experienced Jackson Dart this season to avoid those injury setbacks and concussion problems. Next up, we've got Josh Jacobs and Rashid Rice. So obviously both have legal troubles, and in the case of Rice, he's also coming back from a knee injury. It's too soon to tell if either are going to face a suspension this season. That's still to be determined, but it does raise the question mark over their character and their trustability moving forward. So for me personally, I'd be very worried. So tier 2, rocking in quiet moments, is probably where I'd be at with these two. Because I think I mentioned it last week. These things can drag on and more details can come out. The picture can become progressively worse. What if there's video footage? What if Rice has done something again to breach his probation? It just feels like you're walking a very thin line with these guys. So although it's kind of settled since the news broke on these two, I'd say I'm probably like an Ian Rappaport tweet away from confirming that they've been suspended from being in tier 1 on these two.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this probably falls down to whether or not you've drafted or not yet, because I think if you haven't drafted yet, you're probably just letting them slide down your board, and there probably gets to a level where they get to. I think I've seen Rice getting down to sort of wide receiver 30 on some projected boards and things like that. And I think if you're getting down to that sort of level, again, you're probably just picking them up, and they're not taking up a sort of high value space for you, as it were. But if you've drafted them, I think it's a different level. I think you think that stress and anxiety is definitely there. I think, as you sort of say, we'll wait to see what the actual punishments are. NFL players always seem to get away with a hell of a lot of legal stuff, so we'll see if anything even happens there. But if you're an owner, this isn't the time to deal them. I think this is sort of where people are probably trying to capitalise on your sort of anxieties and kind of get a cheap deal and obviously hope them for the best results and such. I think this is the time to sort of hang on to them, see what's happening later in summer, how things are sort of shaking out, and then sort of make a call accordingly. I think, like you said, the character issue, especially with Rice, where it's been multiple things now. He's in a contract year. Is he just one of those people that's just going to completely blow their career and things? Jacobs seems obviously more severe in terms of what he's been accused of and such, but maybe hasn't been as serial an offender. So, but again, like I mentioned last week, there is moral stuff on this. Some people don't like to draft people from certain teams. Some people really put a lot of value on wanting to really cheer and support their players and such, so you're probably staying away from these guys, and if you've got them, you're probably disappointed that they're on your team. But I think, as I say, you're not going to get anything in return at the moment that's going to be close to the on-field production that they're going to give you and the fantasy points that they're going to give you. So I'd probably say I'm in the temple rubbing stage at the moment, sort of stage 3 and such, and maybe seeing again later in the summer might be when the panic stations either move up or down, according to how things are looking at that stage.
Fair. I think you've described me there in terms of players that I'm rooting for selected. So
yeah,
if our draft hadn't been done, I think I would have steered clear.
Yeah, and I think that is, again, I think it's important in fantasy. Again, there could be a lot of stress. There could be a lot of sort of worry about it. You kind of pick it, but it is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something that adds to your fandom of the NFL and your enjoyment. And some people are bigger fantasy fans than they are NFL and all the rest of it. But it's got to be fun. It always reminds me of sort of like gambling ads where they sort of say, if you're not having fun, stop it and such. And obviously in leagues like ours where there is money down and things. So there is an element of you've got to keep it that way. And if you're morally conflicted about a player and all the rest of it, it can be a bit of a blight on your Sundays and things. So I say if you haven't drafted yet and that is an issue for you, just avoid them. Don't worry about, again, that's sort of your deciding factor if you're choosing between them and a couple other players, as it were. And if you've got them, let's say, you don't have to trade them for nothing. Maybe wait till the value comes up and then take a little hit on them.
Looking at my projected scores for this season, I don't think I'm going to be enjoying fantasy football. I'll be in that
It's
camp
a long
anyway.
game, mate. 2031's your year, I can.
Exactly. Where do you want to go next, Jack?
So next one, again, we're going to get to the news of all the trades and stuff that were going on. But I thought Jalen Hurts was one worth mentioning. I think AJ Brown obviously leaving. We've spoken a lot about this and my high thoughts on AJ Brown and that potential partnership with the Patriots and everything that he's going to bring there, but maybe haven't spoken quite enough about what that might do for the Eagles and in particular Jalen Hurts. If you're thinking of, again, he is somebody that can go rounds 1 and 2. So if if he's on your radar, you're going to have to get him early. And does this impact that at all? Really? So yeah, I just really kind of gave it some thought, gave it some sort of looked into some projections for the other wide receiver room and what it may do. And I think ultimately I have come out not concerned and sort of, the sort of most relaxed of all of our panic meters, so not really a care in the world. And I think the reason is, I think Devontae Smith, again, we've bigged him up. I really do feel as though he has someone that has the talent to reach wide receiver 1 level. He's shown it once Brown's been out. We do need to see it now, obviously on a consistent basis and such, but Lemon seems an exciting ad, and then Wicks and Goddard are just good targets too. So with Barkley, I just feel as though that's still a really strong offensive room, or strong offense without, it's not elite, but I think, I think it's strong enough for this first year to not be concerned about whether or not you're taking Hurts where you originally were. You might bump him down behind maybe 1 or 2, depending where exactly you have him in your quarterback rankings and such, but I don't think you're moving him too far. So ultimately I thought, not a care in the world, really, but my only thinking was, if they have another poor year where, with the ball in the air and sort of the aerial game is rough again, that's been a murmur now for a few years. That's sort of been on the radar, and I could see it becoming an issue where do the Eagles, I think he's contracted through for another couple of years, but do they start to look to move off him if they don't reach where they expect themselves to get to in the off season, and the fans aren't happy with the game that's being put on the field, as it were. So longer term, I think this year is almost the deciding year for Hurts. I think a little bit. Again, he's portioned a lot of the blame for their offense and things, but they obviously now made changes in the coaching and on the player roster. So I think this is a big year for him. But yeah, as I say, for now, I'm not concerned. As I say, not a care in the world.
So I've got some stats for you.
Okay.
Hertz has been on the slide for the past 4 years. He's scored less points year on year, and that's with AJ Brown. He's got a 5th offensive coordinator in as many years, and I think in the 4 games he played without Brown since 2022, he averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game, which is lower than the 23 points per game when they played together. As you say, he has got a new cast of receivers, and he's obviously still going to be a threat with his legs. So by no means do I think he's going to sort of drop off a cliff all of a sudden and be sort of a shambles in any way. But it's just about whether or not he can find that preferred target. If it is Devonta Smith or whoever it may be, just strike up that link up with them. But I just think potentially he's just trending in the wrong direction for me at the moment. So similarly to you, I'm not that worried. I think I'm tier 3 on this one, but just might need to show me something at the beginning of the season to sort of settle my concerns. But that's obviously not something that I want because it's the Eagles. So I hope Brown leaving them completely messes them up. But I'm not too worried about him at the moment either, to be honest.
No, yeah, it sounds like we're sort of similar, and yeah, that's interesting on those stats. As you sort of say, a decline's never a good thing to see. So, it'll be interesting as I sort of say what happens this year.
So next up, we will go with Marvin Harrison Jr. So he suffered with injuries last season, which limited him to 12 games. But I've got to be honest, I don't think I've been convinced by him since he entered the league, given the hype that was sort of around him when he came in. Kyler Murray's obviously gone now. You've got Michael Wilson shining. Jacoby Brissett is holding out, which is just fair play to the guy. So we don't even know who the quarterback is going to be at this point, but it is likely to be Brissett. Is there going to be a Jeremiah Love focused offense? Maybe. He's in an absolute hellhole of a division, so I wonder if they'll even manage to get the ball to him in those matchups in that division. I'm actually tier 2, Marvin Harrison Jr., doing quite of nervously rocking in my in quiet moments so far, so it's a bit worrying. But yeah, I'm very worried about Marvin Harrison until, again, similarly to previous points, until he shows me something. I think the signs are quite worrying for him and the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd be right there with you, holding hands as we rock. Panicking about him. He came off our board in the South wide receiver, I think 32, which, again, I think if you're getting him there, you feel a little bit more comfortable because you haven't had to put too much capital and assets into him. But I think it obviously points to that lack of confidence that you're sort of mentioning, really. You know, he's showing glimpses of being a good player, but is it 2 years in we are now? And I think you'd like to have seen a lot more. The quarterback play and obviously the tanking potential could easily write off another year. And then, you know, you're hoping and potentially you're relying on a rookie quarterback to come in. So all of a sudden, you know, you're 3, 4, 5 years into a career and it's never really got started. So, yeah, I just think he's someone whose value is just sort of dropping like a stone. And as you say, he came in with all sorts of sort of, hype and sort of excitement around him and such. And we've just seen so little of that kind of really, you know, come to the forefront, as it were. So, no, I'm with you. Yeah, nervously rocking is where I'd be.
Who's next on your list?
So I thought Bucky Irving was one that, again, I just... A little bit like Hurts, somebody that's not been massively on my radar, but I've just been hearing some murmurs. I think the sort of Bucks have been talking about that they see sort of the use of Irving and Gainwell being very similar. So I'm not sure we're going to have that sort of Irving-dominated run game, that maybe we all sort of expect and maybe sort of, kind of feel it could come through. I think that could be quite an evenly split backroom and potentially Gainwell, off the back of last year, potentially becoming lead running back. So he's just someone who, again, I just think with the way that Tampa do things, the share of sort of plays potentially being there, and the fact last year really was sort of a halt to his momentum and excitement. I think he's still in the top 20, running backs or so. He's still got a bit of youth on his side, but obviously with running backs coming into the league like they are and sort of the quantity that they are, I appreciate this year wasn't quite so much the same, but but that's to be expected. He's just somebody who, again, I'm just probably a bit of temple rubbing going on for me on him and whether or not, he is who we all thought he was going to be coming out his rookie year.
I'm a little bit more concerned. I've gone tier 2, nervously rocking again. I believe Bucks head coach Todd Bowles said last week that Irving would be ready in the summer or fall. So, I mean, if it's fall, then we've got a bit of a problem because that coincides with the start of the season. So he's recovering from the shoulder in surgery. As you mentioned, he's got Kenneth Gainwell looking to push in and wrestle snaps away from him as the RB1. Those factors combined, I'd probably say I'm just a little bit more worried about his future in establishing himself with the Bucks.
Yeah, and as you sort of say, that's what's going to be really interesting to sort of play out. And again, it's he's just one of those that's just on my radar that, again, he's still going pretty high. That there still seems to be quite a lot of value in him, and maybe there needs to be a little bit more consideration for him.
So next up on my list is Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. So I want to start by saying that I do not doubt for a second that Jayden Daniels is a great quarterback. He's an elite level quarterback, or potentially, and he has a big future ahead of him. He's shown enough to suggest that he is a star, but horrible injury problems last season limited him to just 7 games after an incredible rookie season. And by the way, his injury issues date back to college. So for me, it's sort of high risk, high reward. If he can stay healthy, he's a dual threat. And he's a serious problem for defenses, but the injury concerns are there. My main issue with him, though, is who is he throwing to? He's got Terry McLaurin, fine. But beyond that, I'm looking at the depth chart now. Van Jefferson, Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, Traylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo. And one talent who I actually do rate and hope that he goes on to have a successful career because I've drafted him, rookie Antonio Williams.
Yeah.
Are we saying that that is good enough? Because Javon Kinlaw said last week, I don't know if you saw his press conference or scrum with the media, he was saying we've got some mother effers on defense now. And if they can lock it down week in and week out, they take away the need for Daniels to really throw a whole lot. I'm not saying he's not going to throw it. Of course he is. But are we good with him running and taking those hits? I just don't know. And like I think I mentioned in previous pods, if they add, they bring back Debo or they add an Ayuk or even a Stephon Diggs, someone like that, then my opinion would change quite a bit. But I just think I'm not that freaked out by it. But I'm just saying I think it's tier 3 for me at the moment with him. Just occasional temple rubbing because he did get drafted quite high by a lot of people. So I don't know where you come down on Jaden Daniels.
He has more question marks than a lot of the quarterbacks that go there, don't they? You know, in terms of that sort of first run of quarterbacks, I suppose. But no, I'm pretty chill about this one. Yeah, I'd sort of say not caring the world. And I think I'm just banking on that first season being the real Daniels. And even then, he had a pretty weak surroundings, you know, and it wasn't like he was blessed then with lots of quarterbacks. You know, I appreciate Scary Terry was a bit younger, but Debo wasn't there that year. And again, sort of, they didn't have a great depth at that point. And I think he sort of showed there what a ceiling he's got. You know, I think clearly we'd like more around him. I sort of say completely agree on Williams as a high potential. And there, I just sort of say there's definitely fillers out there that they can go out and get one. But I think if injuries don't plague him, he has that high-end potential, short and long-term. And with their defense, I fully understand, fully get what you mean, but I also think better defense, get you on the field more time on offense and you know, more opportunity to kind of go score and everything like that as well. So for me, no, I'm not concerned. I'm still taking him where his ADP is. And as I say, I still feel pretty cool and calm and relaxed about Daniel. So, not concerned, not carrying the world for me.
I think I need to take a chill pill. I'm far too concerned. Who's up next for you, Jack?
I suppose Travis Hunter was one who sort of came to mind, who, again, he's not somebody that I'm deeply concerned about, but definitely some temple rubbing, because I think we're just at a stage where it'd just be helpful for fantasy players if they would just come out and commit to him where he's going to play and what one position. You know, it's clearly incredible that he can even take plays in both. But from a fantasy standpoint, we do have the IDP, and I know there is some attraction to that if you draft him, obviously potentially covering 2 roles, or if you've got him in your IDP, they still do pick up those offensive points and such, I believe. So, you know, there's some upside there. But I think, if we're honest, last year he sort of, you know, he entered the league with such hype, but he was sort of middling in both roles last year, and I think, you know, we probably want to see him become elite in one of them. I'd rather that than, and again, potentially occasionally step into the other role, but rather than it being a split job like it was. Keep trade cut, have him as wide receiver 50. So again, if you don't have IDP, he's probably someone that you're not putting too much capital in, you're not investing in him too early and such. So, you know, again, we're not talking about somebody who's at the minute a contender for your wide receiver 1 or you know, he's probably more of a super flex and things. But he's just one of those, you're probably going to take him over some good players still. And it's just that sort of temple rubbing of, can we just find out what he is? Like, can we really see what he is this year? And I think just to kind of give us, on the fantasy standpoint, a bit of confidence moving forward.
Completely agree. Echo your sentiments and your tier. The question I just have for him, what is he?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think he started to put things together a little bit before his injury last season, but the Jags are now saying that they're going to increase his snap count on the defensive side of the ball, as you've mentioned. It just kind of makes sense considering the competition on offense now with Trevor Lawrence's other targets. But yeah, I just think he's very much a player you've got to be slightly concerned with, albeit you would have known those risks involved with him going into a draft. So it's not nothing new, but Yeah, I would agree with your tier and your sentiments there, and just interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, definitely. And as you sort of say, I think coming out of college and such, I think this sentiment generally was he's better on the defensive side of the ball. Like he could be green jacket, sort of all timer and that, and then wide receiver, he's like a high end. I don't think he was ever sort of a Chase or a Jefferson or anything like that talent as a wide receiver, but just a tier or two below that. So I think the sentiment was always, on the defensive side of things. So for fantasy, I don't know how high his upside ever was, but again, he's one of those that he seems really likable as a character compared to, again, some of the people that we are talking about and things like that. He does seem the other way. He seems like a really good kid, and such. And I think he's quite easy to want to invest in, but it's just to say that sort of, maybe temple rubbing as we sort of say in terms of when to exactly do that.
So, rounding this exercise off, it's the NFC West quarterbacks who are set to face the Rams. So, it's a multiple pick here. If you're Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold, or Brock Purdy, good luck to you. Because you've now got Myles Garrett hunting you down on the field as part of a Rams defense that already has dogs on it. So
how many zeros do you think Brissett put on his pay packet request when that trade went through? At least another one, wasn't it?
Absolutely, quick tweak to the terms, no doubt. But yeah, as I say, just dogs on their defense already, regardless of them losing Jared Verse in that trade. By the way, Aaron Donald is just out here casually posting clips of himself working out in the gym and dropping hints that he could come back. So that's something else you got to look forward to as well, potentially. But I mean, look, I haven't got the mental fortitude or the body to take hits off anyone, let alone NFL athletes. But if you're Brissett, the poor bloke, or you see Myles Garrett and potentially Aaron Donald running at you after pancaking one of your linemen, I'm throwing that ball out of bounds as fast as you can. So for me right now, Brissett, Darnold, Purdy, I'm tier 1 for all of them. Panic attacks through the night, picturing that happening. But I may drop down a tier if Donald's comeback doesn't materialise. But my God, that's a scary Rams defense to face now.
Now, even without Donald, mate, I am freaking out. I am, if I'm honest, because again, Purdy's got a little bit on his feet and stuff, but like they're not mobile quarterbacks either. Like they're not, we're not talking about, Lamar Jackson having the speed to potentially leg it away and stuff like that. These boys will get eaten. So it's one of those knock-on effects. And again, probably from a fantasy standpoint, it won't have too much of an impact as such. But those game weeks, you got to look at them, and it might, you might shift your starting lineup a little bit. So, fair play to any of them taking the field and facing that, because braver men than me.
I've always wanted to do this, Jack, and we've actually finally got something. So, breaking news.
Oh.
The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office have issued a warrant for the arrest of 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk on a misdemeanor charge of exhibition of speeding. So just when you thought things couldn't get worse for Ayuk, he's now been caught speeding as well.
I mean, speeding's never good. Obviously, it can cause accidents, but it's probably the lesser charge of a lot of the stuff you hear about. Something I heard, again, I think it's quite hard sometimes as fans and as supporters and such, but I did hear it on a good podcast where they were sort of saying, how big injuries can psychologically impact people in different ways. And they were just of the opinion that there might be a lot more going on mentally for Ayuk, just because of the way he's acted ever since it's happened. I think 49ers have sort of said he's barely spoken to them and stuff. And you do have to have a little bit of sort of well-being concern for him as a character. These are young men. They do have dreams. They do have high expectations and things, and to potentially have that taken away, and to have more time on your own when you're injured, and it's quite a lonely thing in terms of recovery and things like that. It does just seem a little bit alarming, to say the least, in terms of sort of how he's gone since that injury. Again, you've got these professionals who are able to get them in such a strong psychological place to sort of drive through injuries, come back stronger, come back better, and all the rest of it. But that, even though these players have a certain amount of that to reach this level, they're not all the same. They're not robots. And all the rest of it. So I'm glad to hear that hopefully nobody was harmed in this sort of latest incident and stuff. But he is one of those that I do, share some real concerns for, because, as I say, a lot of the reporting, again, it's not like the Jacobs and the Rice where you're just like, that's just scumbag behaviour and all the rest of it. It does seem to point towards someone who might actually be struggling. So, and as we know, mental health and all the rest of it these days is, well, forever, but more spoken about these days is no laughing matter. It's something that, do you know what I mean? You just hope people are okay.
100% agree with you. Exactly what you said, the way that it played out, and just sort of the reports that came out, and from the comments from the 49ers players, there's definitely something at play there. So wish Ayuk the best. Hopefully he gets a situation that suits him better, and 49ers as well, and hopefully that all works out.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next segment, and that is having a closer look at the Sunday League trades and waivers. So if we start in the Midlands, Jack, 49ers running back Kalon Black was snapped up by Marcos, who was one of two bidders, and he landed in for $8 from his $100 FAAB. Obviously a rookie that the 49ers think highly of, believe have a bright future ahead of him. Naturally, they're going to hope that CMC has got plenty left in the tank. But other than Jordan James, there looks to be a pretty big window of opportunity for Black in San Francisco to emerge as the RB2 over time. So particularly in the short term with Isaac Guerrero, he's recovering from an injury as well. Was Black someone on your radar? And what did you make of this move?
Yeah, he seems to be someone who's sort of been a bit of a top waiver wire target. I think there's McCaffrey and others in the building, haven't they? They've been talking him up quite a lot as well. So, that seems promising. So I actually have gone for him on the waiver wire today. So I'm hoping by the time this goes out, no one else in the South has. I didn't put any money on it. I'm just hoping to pick him up on a free, just because, as I said, I only saw those reports of today in terms of the positive sort of references and such. So, but yeah, he seems really popular, as I say, across the waiver wire and in various leagues. He seems to have gone. So, seems an interest on $8 from Marcos. Again, clearly not too fussed about spending a bit of money early on and all the rest of it. You know, I'm one of those that tends to try and hang on to my fab budget for as long as I can, and then maybe going all big when I really need someone, just to make sure I get them. But yeah, people do use different ways. But it'll be interesting. Yeah, as you sort of say, with McCaffrey, they've got to lessen his load at some point, again, just to make sure they keep getting years out of him and such. So there could be a good opportunity.
I've got one more to add to the list from the Midlands.
Okay.
Keen to get your take on this, because it was a move that I made. I added Isaiah Pacheco to my team after someone else dropped him. Free transfer. I know he's injury prone. We saw that during his time with the Chiefs. But I just think there's not a lot there at running back for the Lions behind Jahmyr Gibbs. As much as I love Gibbs and watching him play, he can't be involved in every single snap. So I'd like to think, at least, that this could prove to be a savvy pickup for me. But are you up or down on Pacheco?
I really liked him for a period. He had that good year a couple of years back and such. I don't think he's going to have anywhere sort of like the Montgomery sort of level of output or anything like that. But yes, certainly a solid sort of roster pickup. And if he, does get more play than... we expect, then that's a great pickup. And if not, he's not really eating up a roster space, is he, or anything like that. So, you're probably not going to get much value back on him. It's one of those where he comes and goes, as it were. So, no, I quite like that as a pickup.
Once he starts running through brick walls for Dan Campbell, Jack, he'll be a favourite, don't worry. But we'll see how he gets on. Over in the South, Packers running back Marshawn Lloyd has unsurprisingly been a popular man after the Josh Jacobs news last week. It was the postman. It was the only bidder for him here, and he landed in for $15. Obviously understand the move, and depending on what the outcome of the Jacobs situation is, Lloyd could be in line for a big role with the Packers. However, that's a decent chunk of his FAAB, and there's been a lot of talk that the Packers might look at the market as well and bring someone else in. What do you make of this move?
Yeah, I think Postman's probably a bit gutted. It's always annoying when there's one bid and you've bid money. No, there should almost be a discount if you're only bid like 50% back or something like that. So, 15. It's obviously 15% of his budget gone on somebody who might not see the field too much and stuff. He had a little bit of hype, Marshawn Lloyd, coming into the league. There's some thoughts that he might push to get on the field and things, but I don't think we've really seen anything there. So I completely understand the movement and things, but yeah, probably a bit deep there in terms of the money.
As you mentioned earlier, you have put Malik Neighbours on the trade block. I think you might have mentioned it, but communicated what you want for him, or is that sort of classified information for now?
No, well, I'm not desperate to trade him. I'm just sort of, I wanted to try and gauge the market, and so far the interest has been absolutely non-existent. So our league is one of the lesser active leagues at the moment. So if I really want to move him on, I might have to go out there proactively and see if I can make anything happen. Ideally, sort of higher end running back would likely be what I'd want me to get in return. Yeah, I think I've mentioned a few times that my running back room is probably where I'm least satisfied at the moment. So if I can maybe upgrade there, I've got some quite good wide receiver depth and such. So potentially, yeah, moving him on for a higher end running back. But we'll see. As I sort of say, I'm not desperate. We'll sort of see how things are shaking out towards summer, and yeah, obviously then kind of see how proactive I want to get with it. But the inbox is open if anybody in the south does fancy some trade talk.
Trades are banned in the Midlands apparently, so
Yeah.
we just don't believe in them. So yes, at least you've got one anyway. So there was also a trade in the south. There's Chris1234 received a Zorn Stribling and a 2027 third rounder in exchange for Jaden Higgins in a deal with the Postman. Higgins, obviously touted for a bright future, will be pushing for a bigger role in the Texans' offense. But Stribling is another player the 49ers liked. Some argued that they reached for him, which may well indicate he has a sizable role there. But chuck in the third rounder as well. What did you make of this trade for both sides?
Yeah, I thought it was a fairly even trade at a glance for me. Again, I think sort of Higgins probably slightly more name weight at this stage, but as you sort of say, Stribling, the more you look into it and such, he is someone that could potentially feature more than we expect sort of this year and beyond. But yeah, I think that was a fairly even trade. Obviously, we're not talking about two sort of blockbuster trade here and such, but yeah, just giving some thoughts really from the guys. So for all the trades that have gone through, I've managed to kind of get some perspective from all the parties involved and such. So the postman who received Jaden Higgins, so he sort of highlighted he was focused on running backs in the draft and just felt he needed some depth at wide receiver to cover the sort of free experienced wide receivers he had. Felt Higgins showed some real potential from week 10 onwards in his rookie year. And just feel sort of Collins might continue to miss some game time, so he could be a genuine sort of regular flex type option. Whilst Chris on the other side of the deal, he feels Stribling and Higgins are quite evenly matched, being at the same sort of age and being drafted in a similar range. He noted Higgins probably has the highest short term ceiling, but just feels both are sort of on par. And with him getting the third rounder, he liked picking up that capital. So he noted he's got 5 wide receivers who would be ahead of both of them. So the player impact for him sort of this year and potentially beyond wasn't really a factor. So it was a bit of a case of kind of a free trade and getting that third rounder for him.
Good stuff. Okay, so over in the UK SL1 League, it's all happening. Bulmer snapped up Jags running back LaQuint Allen with a bid of $5. But he then ended up dropping him as he won the bidding war for Marshawn Lloyd for $15. Malik and Mag added Ravens running back Adam Randall to his roster without having to spend a cent. A pricey route to get there, Jack, but I presume Bulmer is happy with how it's ended with him getting Lloyd, who we spoke about, but provided that there is an opening for him, if Jacobs gets any sort of suspension, he'll be hopeful that he can do a job for him.
Yeah, as you say, so $20 on obviously unrostered running backs and such is quite a bit, but at the same time, if that's where you're short and your room short and you think there's an opportunity there, then go for it, isn't it? So I think Allen's second year player was quite highly noted for his sort of pass protection, which obviously could get him on the field. It might see him play more than many expect this year, but yeah, obviously then dropped him to go get Lloyd, who he obviously feels as though could have bigger impact. So yeah, interest there. Ravens running back Malaga Mag kind of picking him up for free, probably a longer term play there, I imagine. I don't think we'd see too much of him this year potentially, but yeah, could be a longer term play there if he's someone that he likes for the future.
So there were some interesting trades here as well. Maligan Mag sent Tua and Adunze to Allstats and received Dart and Judy in return. Allstats then packaged up Tua, Tet McMillan and Tony Pollard to acquire Malik Willis, Michael Wilson and Chuba Hubbard, plus a 2027 third rounder. And he wasn't done there. He then sent Puka Nakua to the Carolina Housecats in return for Saquon Barkley, DJ Moore, and a 2027 first rounder. So lots of wheeling and dealing here from All Stats. He's been very active. What did you make of these moves and where he's ended up after all that?
Yeah, and after I obviously gave him all the praise last week and picked him out as the winner of the league with his wide receiver room of Tet, Puka and JSN, he's obviously traded 2 of those pieces. So he heard my praise and thought, yeah, that's enough for me, and so I sent them on the road. Yeah, so I guess sort of breaking them down. So Tua and Ndunze for Dart and Judy. I think I shade this one to All Stats. I think just because Dart I have my concerns about, as I raised sort of earlier, and Ndunze, I expect sort of Loveland to potentially lead the target share, but I do think Ndunze will be wide receiver 1. Tua seems like he's on track to start for the Falcons, and whilst I don't see sort of Tua as a revival candidate, a la Darnold or Mayfield, someone like that, he might do enough to sort of carry on being a starter in the league. So yeah, I think kind of getting Tua and Ndunze for Dart and Judy. Yeah, I think Tua and Ndunze is maybe the way I'd prefer that. I know a lot of people would say Dart's the most valuable piece there, especially in a super flex, potentially. But yeah, no, I'd probably just shade that to All Stats. I'll give Malaga's thoughts. I'll give sort of All Stats roundup thoughts of all of them at the end. But Malaga Mag, he needed to upgrade his backup quarterback. He put feelers out there in the league, and most offers were along the lines of sort of Tua plus Alvin Kamara for sort of teams' backup quarterbacks. All Stats then sent him back a modification, which ended up being the deal that they struck. He's pretty happy getting Dart for Ndunze. Lamar and Dart give him 2 mobile quarterbacks, which should set high floors as long as they don't get injured. Ndunze was always drafted by him to be traded. He has wide receivers that he thinks are more likely to break out, like Downs and Washington. So he felt Ndunze was easy to trade away. So yeah, quite interesting there to kind of get his thoughts. And again, it shows you looking at trades from the outside in. Sometimes you know you don't know all the pieces and exactly how people's rosters are sort of made up. So yeah, it was great to kind of get that inside.
There was a late entry in this league as well, actually. So Killjoy17 traded CJ Stroud for Baker Mayfield with the Carolina Housecats. Out of those 2 quarterbacks, who would you prefer, Jack?
I think you go for CJ Stroud because of the long, potential years, sort of the age. I ultimately go there. I think Mayfield, he scores pretty regularly, pretty high and such now. But I do think, I think Stroud is probably the one that I'd go for there. I don't know if you have a preference.
I agree with you. Yeah. Like you say, I think I've raised my doubts and concerns with Stroud, but long term, looking forward, I think it's definitely Stroud over Mayfield for me. So
yeah, I think you go for that. But let me go through the other trades as well, because I've got some other good insight as well that All Stats was into. So yeah, as you said, he then sent Tua, Tech McMillan, and Pollard for Malik Willis, Michael Wilson, and Chuba Hubbard, plus a third rounder 2027. So again, I think this is a pretty even deal again. I think Tech McMillan is, the biggest piece. Pollard, I'd shade ahead of Hubbard, but I don't know. That's pretty even as well. And I think, and Tua, as just mentioned, could be serviceable. And whilst Willis has potential, I don't think we know what he's going to be, and if he's definitely going to be an upgrade on Tua. So yeah, I think the third rounder doesn't really move me, but in the end, I think I shade this one for Bryce just because he gets Tech McMillan. Michael Wilson is a nice piece, but Tech could potentially be a foundational piece. So yeah, I thought Bryce probably just shaded that one. He commented, once he saw that All Stats had traded away Dart and had Tua in a starting quarterback, he thought he could be interested in Willis. So he was Bryce's quarterback free. So again, that shows how proactive you have to be if you're looking for trades and things like that. You see someone's made a trade. Okay, how does that shake out their roster? Could I have someone that they might value and things? So yeah, he sort of notes that Willis could be the next Lamar, but he also could be, Dolphins are in for the quarterback 2027 class. He said, whilst it's a shame to lose a high value quarterback free, he wasn't a likely regular starter, and Tech McMillan will be. So he pointed out that Wilson had a really strong year last year, but with Cardinals being so volatile, he just feels as though, again, that Tech McMillan has that higher ceiling. And again, Hubbard, he feels could be more reliable than Pollard, but he has Brooks and Singleton that he's banking on a breakthrough from one of those. And he doesn't have a 2027 first rounder, so just felt Tet was a strong long-term piece for him to add. So again, some good insight there. And then the final one, yes, Puka Nacua for Barkley, DJ Moore, and a first rounder. So a bit of a blockbuster there, in terms of our leagues. So yeah, I think that one was probably the most eye-catching of the lot for me. Barkley's a strong short-term return. DJ Moore, I'm not too sure the value I'm giving him just yet, but obviously the first rounder is the key piece there as well. But if Puka puts obviously any of the off-field troubles behind him, he's a top 10 fantasy asset for years to come. So I'll sort of share Allsat's thoughts now as I sort of say, it kind of gives it a bit of kind of linear thinking to what he's done. So he was quite blasé about it all, to be honest with you. He was pretty chill. Again, making all those trades, I'd be sort of mentally flipping through hoops and all the rest of it. But yeah, he was pretty blasé. But he said he traded Puka as he felt he needed to improve his running backs. He also really likes the 2027 draft class, so really put a lot of value on that first rounder. The trade to get Willis also felt like a good trade due to his running ability. The Dart trade, it was probably the one that he came out on the wrong end of, but he was always planning to trade Puka to get depth on the team, knowing that he has JSN as his centerpiece. So, again, that sort of thinking 2 steps ahead. Again, you look at one trade, does he win it, does he lose it? But actually, that coupled with what he's got from Puka, has ultimately ended up, he's happy with the roster he's ended up with for now. But I did ask whether or not I should have said whether or not the trades are done or if he's still going to be active, because loads of movement from him. Carolina Housecats, who was on the other end of this and obviously receiving Puka, he just notes how Puka's been a match winner for him in other leagues. Saquon's a bit too old for his roster, and now he's got Puka, May, and Genty as his top 3 assets. They're nicely aligned with age. So again, thinking about how the roster's going to look beyond year 1 is obviously important there. So yeah, interesting, and loads going on there.
I love it. Is quick question for you. Is it worrying that I haven't fielded any trade proposals for any of my players?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those, like, trading's not for everybody. Trading's one of those, again, some people love to be active, some people just like to sit on their rosters and all the rest of it. I think where you might struggle mentally, you have to give something up. You're not getting anything for free. And it's one of those where it's sort of, you've got to say goodbye to some players that you might really, really like. And that's always the gamble, isn't it? That's the thing with trades. But that's what makes it exhilarating. It's that sort of risk and reward, isn't it? So, it's I think for yourself and the Midlands League, as well as the South League as well. It's sort of one of those where sometimes it's a domino effect. A few things happen and then they all start to come in.
This shop is closed, my friend.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up any of my guys. Do you know what's quite mental though is that I've never paid so much attention to a future draft as I have because of this league.
Yeah.
I've sort of already started looking at the 2027 draft class, even looking at the college football PS5 game. I'm really, really invested. So it's quite interesting to see some of the talents that are coming out next year. So they'll be picking up first rounders for next year. could be a sensible move. So no notable trades in UK SL2 League, but both Josh Allen and Jahmyr Gibbs are currently on the trade block. So interesting to see how that shakes out. Over in the north, La Flame 88 or LA Flame 88 sent Odunze, Cam Ward, and a 2027 first rounder to Hambats for Jamar Chase and Antonio Williams. Chase is obviously going to be a fantasy beast for a while. We've mentioned him already. Williams, he's a player I drafted. Very excited to see what he can offer moving forward. I think he's got a big opportunity with the Commanders to become a top target for Daniels. That's a lot going the other way though, Jack. So what did you make of this particular trade and what was the feedback?
Yeah, I like it. I like this for LA Flame 88. As you sort of say, Ward and the 2027 first round in particular are some good future pieces, but Jamar has so much road left in front of him. He could be a top 3 wide receiver for the next 5-6 years still. He's that sort of level. And Antonio Williams could get opportunities in that void of a wide receiver room like we mentioned at the Commanders. So yeah, I definitely preferred his side of this deal. His thoughts, LA Flames thoughts, were giving up Cam Ward, Odunze, and a future 2027 first is significant value, but Quine Chase gives you one of those true elite difference makers in Dynasty. Chase is still in his prime and has overall wide receiver 1 upside every season, which is a type of asset that can win championships. On the other side, you're betting against the uncertainty of Ward's development, Odunze's reaching Chase's elite tier, and the unknown value of the 2027 first. Antonio Williams is someone he's added in every league he's in, so a nice additional piece with a lot of upside and a clear path to become wide receiver 2. Hambat's thoughts, so on the other side of this, he sort of said every draft he goes into, he likes to gamble hard on getting quarterbacks late. It never really worked out for him in this draft. He didn't want to take Lamar as early as he did. Had to do something. The JSN trade package was on the table for him as well, which I think we'll come to in a minute. But he much prefers the package of young guys who have shown that they belong rather than straight rookies. And he really rates Rome. Yeah, he really rates Rome highly. So he highlights that they say never to trade Chase for a fair deal, which is what he's had to do, but sometimes you've got to push a deal through. His only regret was wasting later round picks in a terrible quarterback 3 and 4 slot for him that he no longer needs. But highlights that he'll now hopefully have 2 decent picks in 2027 without needing a quarterback. So again, yeah, as I say, I would go on the Chase side, but I think if you've got that vision for your team and stuff, as Hambats does, I can completely see why he's maybe done that as well.
Sensible thinking. So we also had another one in this league, and that was Jay Passmore 92 sent Jackson Smith and Jigba and a 2027 second rounder via Hambats for Mendoza, Tate, and a 2027 first rounder and a third rounder in a deal with Lewis D 92. Lots going on here. When I saw JSN was traded away, I immediately thought, nope, wouldn't do that. But Mendoza, Tate in return, exchanging of picks, those are 2 potential pillars of the team for years to come. How did you see that trade, and what did the guys say about that one?
Yeah, I think I shade it to Passmore as well. So again, whilst sort of arguably no value is enough for JSN, I like this haul with potentially a quarterback 1 for the long term, potentially a wide receiver 1 for the long term, if Tate comes good on his promise. And then obviously the first round of next year gives him 2 picks from a supposed strong class. So yeah, I liked it there, but it was just really interesting to me, kind of going through the trade, that it is all the wide receivers that are really getting the value. They're the hot commodity, as it were. We haven't really seen any elite quarterbacks be traded. The top tier running backs haven't gone off the table. It has been the wide receivers that people have been a little bit, more comfortable trading. And I think that probably plays to an idea that there might be a bit more movement at the very top there, or it's just a stronger receiving room there as well. But Jay Passmore thoughts, he was never drafted to win this year, but wanted a player like JSN to get him as much as possible. So Tate, Mendoza and a future first was just lovely, he said. Which, again, I thought that was interesting in terms of sort of, using your first round pick entirely with the thought of, I'm going to use that for more capital, as it were. So that was interesting. And then Lewis D sort of shared, he said, we went back and forth on it for about a week. He thinks he's overpaid a little bit, but it's what you have to do for the top guys. He thinks it's safer for him knowing what JSN is, but all the upside is on the package deal, as it's basically impossible for JSN's value to go up, where his side of the deal could end up making him look stupid in years to come. So he's sort of obviously highlighting there, yeah, JSN is at peak value. He's just paid pretty much the most you're going to pay for him, and you're not really going to get that in return. What's what he's trended away, Mendoza, Tate, and obviously whoever's drafted in the first round next year, they could all obviously bring back lots of assets in the future and things like that. And I just thought that was quite an interesting way of thinking about it. Again, sort of, I'm fairly new to Dynasty, you're brand new to Dynasty, and it's that sort of mindset that the sort of long-term successful players have. So I thought that was really interesting. He did just end by saying sort of he's heard people say he robbed JSN, and he's heard others say that he got fleeced. So he sort of feels that probably says that it's quite a fair deal for all.
Fair. Do you know what that's just reminded me of? I've noticed this week that there are certain accounts on Twitter and whatnot where they're making these lists of players to draft, players to avoid, and they're doing it in like groups of 5. These lists are never ending. So by the time the season comes round, every single player will have been on one of these lists or on both. And it's like, you're basically just covering your tracks on either side. And everyone's got a different opinion. You're playing to the crowd and whatnot. But yeah, it's always difficult, isn't it, to sort of nail down who comes out the winner in these. And just, you've got to give it time to see how it all plays out as well. But opinions will differ, won't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's just there's almost two different players of fantasy, and there's probably the ones that are a bit more maybe like certainly you, but maybe like me, who are sort of think of these players that they actually play for you and that they matter to you, and like that there's a relationship there and things, and you have that weird commitment to them. And then there's people obviously here as well who it is, I think, they're talking about assets, and they're talking about and it is much more. This is a game. These aren't real people, and they're thinking more about the value and probably a little bit more sort of switched on to that side of things, and I think it's just really interesting the two different sort of disparities there of sort of the mind frames of fantasy players.
Great stuff, guys. Loving all the activity so far, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of more between now and the start of the season, so look forward to that. Moving on to the NFL news this past week then, Jack. So pretty quiet week really, wasn't it? Not a lot happened. So let's save the big stories for last. We'll start with Nick Bosa making progress in his recovery from a torn ACL. It was suggested that he could be back for training camp. Obviously a massive boost for the 49ers, getting him and Fred Warner back for the start of the season. Linchpins of that defense. No one will be happier than defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, I'm sure. But fantasy-wise, a big scorer who can get after the quarterback. And so if you've drafted him or intend to do so as your IDP, you'll feel a lot better based on this latest injury report, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's good to hear some news. We want the best players in the league. We want them at their best. And he's obviously not got too long left in the tank and things. So fingers crossed he's someone we see wreaking absolute havoc. Again, because he's right up there amongst the very best, isn't he?
We mentioned it earlier. The Giants have signed every wide receiver in the world apparently on the market this week. Braxton Berrios, who I imagine, as I said, will be more on special teams as a returner. But Juju Smith-Schuster and OBJ also signing, with the latter returning after his memorable spell in New York previously. I do like the moves, Jack. I just think they add experience and knowledge to the wide receiver room. I know opinions will differ. Agreed with your sentiments earlier on the dart side of it all, but hopefully reliable weapons. And they can aid and mentor the likes of Neighbours, Malachi Fields, and hopefully help them develop further as well. But I hope and I think it's smart work from the Giants, provided it's not a strategy for a longer sort of cover for Neighbours' absence. But what did you make of these moves?
Yeah, I get it to a degree. The only thing I'd maybe pick up on is you've got some pretty funky character profiles coming in there in terms of Beckham Jr. and Juju in particular, isn't there? It's not like you've got some wallflowers, and like you said, they're hopefully mature and they're going to pass on learnings and things like that. But in a room we're already talking about there potentially being some conflict and some, and things like that. Do you need to add a couple, sort of opinionated or sort of outspoken people into that? I don't know. I don't know. I hope it works out for you. But as I said, Giants, there's just too much noise coming out there for me. There's something that, they need to get a handle on pretty quickly.
I think they're all on short-term deals, right? I think 1-year deals or something, or prove-it deals. So you don't even know if they're sort of going to stick around. But
yeah. No, you wouldn't expect all of them to, would you? I wouldn't have thought.
No, exactly. So yeah, we'll see how they get on. But then came the big one. The LA Rams traded for Myles Garrett with Jared Verse, a 2027 first-rounder, and additional picks going to the Browns. Absolute blockbuster of a trade. Monster move from the Rams in particular, who are just clearly not messing about. Want to be in the Super Bowl in LA at the end of this season, and they added the most dominant defensive figure in the league, which makes them a really frightening proposition. They're now clear favourites to reach the Super Bowl and go on and win it. And they've got the NFL leader in sacks, pass yards and touchdowns, receptions and receiving touchdowns on their team, in Garrett, Stafford, Nakua and Adams. So, I mean, I do like Verse. I think I actually recall about him last week when we were talking about late round pickups. And I think that's a really good pickup for the Browns, who have got more draft capital to continue their rebuild. An impressive list of who they've acquired already. But it doesn't always guarantee that it's going to be successful. You've got to hit on your picks. So much like my fantasy team, actually, now I think about it. But this is surely all about the Rams, Garrett, and making them clear favourites to win it all this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. Again, it feels as though these sort of trades are becoming, even in my sort of relatively short tenure as a fan of the NFL, it does feel as though big names are moving more regularly, and such. So it was really exciting to see. It was proper, as I say, someone put it in the group. and I think I was in the middle of something, so I saw it, and I didn't. But I was like, I want to carry on, get through what it was that I was doing. But when it's just in your head, you're like, nah, that can't be. And then I was just like, no, I've got to read it, got to see what's going on, or now sort of thing. So yeah, mega. I think Myles Garrett, he's such a beast. I think it's been interesting. I've listened to a few podcasts just to kind of get some more expert opinion and such, and it probably shows where expert viewers and sort of better, not necessarily better fans than me, but more knowledgeable fans certainly than me and such kind of getting their opinions. Because when I first saw it, I thought that's a really sort of fair deal. Again, for me, Verse in my mind is an ascending player who could, again, in my mind, could become the best defensive player in the league and such like that. But having listened to a few podcasts, there seems to be a general perception, that he's brilliant. He's obviously achieved things as someone entering the league that not many do. But maybe he doesn't have quite that ceiling if he doesn't evolve to break into the top 5 and such. So maybe a little bit lower than that. And then people maybe thought, again, pointing at the sort of Micah Parsons 2 first rounders and Kenny Clark, and then what Max Crosby was going to go for. Maybe they didn't get quite enough for Garrett in the end. But as I said, for me, I think, like you sort of say, draft picks and stuff are great, but getting Verse, who, okay, he might not be a completely comparable player and such, but getting someone who could be a centerpiece of your defense for long term, I think, he's got to be worth at least a first round, if not a first plus a set. Again, so I do think his value is maybe, from what I listen to, as I say, by people that know a hell of a lot more than me, I just thought they maybe undervalued it. But as you say, for the Rams, it's go time. I think we mentioned last week that they are just one of the teams that just put all their chips in as often as they can. And yeah, it'll be just really interesting to see how it all plays out. Because again, I just hope it's not going to happen, because injuries always happen and things like that. I just hope we get to see them at their best for as much of the season as we can, because they could be an absolute all-timer of a team on both sides of the ball now.
Does it raise more questions about the Ty Simpson pick for you? Because had they gone for a wide receiver, a Mackay Lemon or whoever they were being linked with at the time, they've gone all in now with Myles Garrett being added to the roster as well. Does that raise more question marks about that particular pick for you, or do you think they were right still to have that long-term picture in mind as well?
Yeah, I think it actually paints a clearer picture of why they went for Simpson and such, because if they didn't go for Simpson, say they went for somebody else, Stafford, I know he's got this 2-year, but you have to start succession planning for him at some point. And I know they've always loved Joe Burrow, and obviously that would just be such a Rams thing for them to end up with Burrow at some point in the next few years. But they would have to have invested some first round capital and such. But because they took Simpson, they've got him on that rookie contract for, probably in 3 years' time, or whenever it is that Stafford hangs his book up. So he's going to be on the contract. He'll have a few years in the, in the building where he could probably step in for a year. Again, if they're going to have, I think like they did post Darnold and stuff, where they have sort of one building year, one gap year. So they've got that. That's then allowed them to trade the first. It's given them the, the financial flexibility to go and get Garrett. So I kind of feel like the Garrett stuff must have been lined up when they did that pick. Like, now for me, that makes way more sense than it did before. So yeah, I feel as though actually this has all been on the cards for longer than probably a lot of people expected.
Another classic Sean McVay appearance at the press conference. He was so giddy sitting next to Garrett.
Oh, mate. Loved it, didn't it? But Garrett as a man, like, how am I the same species as that person? Like, I just can't get my head around it. Like, he's just a freak.
Absolutely ridiculous. And like I said earlier, if Donald gets out of bed and decides he fancies a part of this as well, that's
I think
it's going to be mental.
I think McCaffrey texted him or something like that, and he was sort of saying, I'm 35. If I can get the spark back, I might. But, it didn't sound... It wasn't a no, but it wasn't also a listen, I'm going to see what my body's up to, and if I can do it. It wasn't maybe quite as promising, but just for one game, just like I don't know what quarterback to pick on, but like just for one game, Ghost, please show us.
I was going to say Sam Darnold, that is,
yeah.
Ghost together.
Yeah, just,
So that wasn't where the big news ended, though. Just hours after that story broke, it was reported then and became official news. The Patriots had dealt for AJ Brown, sending a 2028 first rounder and a 2027 fifth rounder in return to the Eagles. Brown put up impressive numbers with the Eagles, and a player of that caliber will no doubt be missed by them, but it just felt as though something wasn't right there in terms of the relationships, and I think it was probably best for both parties to go their separate ways. Brown is obviously reunited with Mike Vrabel. He links up with Drake May to fill that void left behind by Stephon Diggs. While the Eagles open up that path now, I guess, for the likes of Devonta Smith, Mekhi Lemon to step up and become their top guys for Jalen Hurts. So I think it's a deal that works for all concerned, really, or at least has the potential to work out for each party. What were your takeaways from this trade deal?
Yeah, I breathed a huge sigh of relief first of all, because I think the first 3 pods I pretty much spoke about Brown as a Patriot the whole time, so I'm glad it actually came out there in the end. I've been pretty shocked about just how much of a fan of the Patriots Brown is. It's one of those weird things where he just all of a sudden, I don't know if you've seen the interview where the lady goes to his house and he's got a Patriots rug in his man cave, and she's like, "Oh, you got that there pretty quick." He's like, "Oh no, I've had that for years." And but then, yeah, I don't know. Apparently there's some pictures of him with Patriots jerseys, but they might be AI when he's a kid. But then he knows his ball. But yeah, he's obviously. I really liked actually how he spoke up at the podium and stuff, because I think it spoke to us as fans and things. You could actually see how elated he was to kind of go there. He's spoken before about how he wished he was drafted there. I think Vrabel made quite a funny quip about sort of how, he even mentioned when he was drafted by the Titans that you're like, "Oh, I really wish I was getting drafted by the Patriots." And Vrabel was like, "Well, you haven't. You're here now." So focus on it and things. So I really like Brown. I really, really, I still have him as, a true elite wide receiver. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting for people who drafted May, such as me, to see what he can do with someone of that level. Some people have sort of mentioned, he's similar standard to Diggs and things. And I just think, they're complete levels apart at this stage of their careers and things. And really excited to see what he does there. And then for the Eagles, again, they'll be clever with what they got in return. As I sort of say, they've still got enough pieces where, it's not left them completely, bare thin there at wide receiver. And I'm sure it'll probably in 10 years' time or whatever it proves, or 5 years' time, prove to be a really shrewd move on their part as well. But I think it had to happen. And I think it's quite exciting for all parties.
Bloody Howie Roseman is cooking up something, and for the Eagles. So
yeah.
I know this ain't heaven, but it's close to it, is what AJ Brown said about the Patriots.
Which, again, if you're a Patriots fan, you've got to love, again, for me, if the Dolphins now, or, football Spurs or anyone signed it on, someone's dropping stuff like that, you're like, I'm instantly going to get their shirt, I'm going to get their jersey, and all the rest of it, I'm all in.
Was there any other news that caught your eye this week, Jack, or was that the bulk of it?
Yeah, I think, again, there's lots of little stories and stuff out there, but I think that, the headline blockbuster stuff was the stuff worth covering.
Good stuff. So that is a wrap on this episode of the Sunday League podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, and although we may well hit a lull in NFL news after the fun of this past week, we'll continue with a weekly pod throughout the off-season with more fun segments and covering all the latest happenings in the league. In the meantime, please do give this episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us across all social media at Sunday League NFL. If you're a first-time listener, or perhaps you're still thinking about joining a league next year and you want to get involved in our community of NFL fantasy football fans based in the UK, and you want to join one of our future leagues, please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com. As always as well, thank you to those who have already subscribed and have been tuning in. We appreciate your support of the pod. But Jack, any final thoughts?
No, I would just sort of say, this is usually a time for us to enjoy the sort of downtime. But yeah, keep your phones on alert, keep your Twitter notifications on, keep your sort of WhatsApps open, because who knows what could be around the corner.
I think we've had another trade come in while we were talking.
Oh, really?
I didn't quite get a chance to check it, so that'll be one to check out. But absolutely agree with that. So hope everyone is getting through the off-season and this week provide a little bit more entertainment for us all. I believe there are 98 days left until the season starts, 15 more Sundays, but I'm definitely not counting down. But that's it from us for now. Thanks for listening to the Sunday League UK NFL podcast, and we will catch you next week.